Hey everybody, this is Lisa Scott and welcome to my channel once again, Permission to Live in the End. And I promised you that I would share part two to a video that I called Change Your Conception of Yourself. And I will share the first video, if you haven't had an opportunity to look at it, in the description of this video. So when you go back and listen to that video, you will notice that in that video I shared a practical example of when I was able to change my own conception of myself and therefore change everything around me when I was around, I don't remember the age. I was very young. I don't want to say what the age was because I truly don't remember, but I was very young. And in that video, I decided to become the teacher of a subject I was having difficulty in. And when I became the teacher, I ended up getting a B in the class. So go to the video for details on what that story was all about. In this part two, I want to share another aspect of how I became the teacher, or the fact that I said that inherently I decided that I was a teacher, or I uncovered that I was a teacher. So I was already a teacher. It was just a matter of it becoming something that I was aware of. So I'm going to share another story of how I changed the conception of myself and changed everything around me. And I hope to keep this short. So I was working in one of my area's largest healthcare organizations years ago, fresh out of high school, did not have a degree. And when I went to work for my area's largest healthcare system, I started in the medical records department. And I was there for about 3 or 4 years when I started to feel just bored out of my mind. I felt like I wasn't being challenged mentally. I was just going through it at that moment in time. And for some reason, I started, not for some reason, because of my level of frustration at that time. And this is pre-Neville, another pre-Neville story. But because of the level of frustration I was going through, I started to all of a sudden, and this is without my conscious awareness of it, actually, until I look back on the whole process, which I have looked back many times. And what started to happen was I started to visualize myself packing a box and walking out of the medical records department. And this visualization was happening on almost a daily basis. Okay. Now remember, I was not consciously aware of the visualization at that time. When I look back at the story, I said, wow, I was thinking about that like daily, that I was packing a box, walking out of the medical records department. But I didn't just walk out of the medical records department, but I was visualizing it almost on a daily basis because of how frustrated, bored, all of that I was. And in the meantime, there was a process called process improvement was brought to the hospital at that time, and the president of the hospital mandated that every single department in the organization had to do what was called a process improvement project team. I was involved in a process improvement project team, and the organization that taught this hospital about process improvement ended up coming back to learn what the hospital had done to tweak this process so well to meet the needs of the healthcare industry. And that organization that taught the hospital was called the 3M Corporation. So the 3M Corporation came back to the hospital that I was working for and decided to record a series of short videos and asked all the various project teams to pick a representative of their particular project to represent during this interview process. I was chosen, okay? I was chosen as a representative of my project team. After I was chosen as a representative of this project team, it turns out that a video was created, and I didn't know this video was created. And the video was released, and the video had been being shown in a department called the education department. And myself in that video was being seen by classrooms of people that were being taught process improvement on a monthly basis. I had no idea of this in the meantime of my feeling the frustration that I was feeling working in the medical records department. One day, guys, the director of the education department, who had been seeing me on this video on a regular basis because she was the one showing the video, she sought me out in the organization because she wanted me to come and teach process improvement to over 2,500 employees for the healthcare organization. Now keep in mind, and don't mind my dog whining in the back, he's looking outside and wanting to go, so I'm going to do that when I stop the video. So she sought me out. She wanted me to become an educator of process improvement to over 2,500 employees, and I did not have a degree. So even in talking to the director of education and telling her I did not have a degree to teach, she did not care. She had already seen my videos, and she felt like whatever I needed to learn, that I was able to learn that information. And she asked me if I wanted to teach, and I said absolutely. And so I went from working in the medical records department to becoming an educator of something called process improvement to over 2,500 employees of all disciplines, doctors, nurses. I don't care what discipline you worked in the hospital, I was your educator for process improvement. I am relating this story back to change your conception of yourself, and you will automatically change the world in which you live. Because I considered myself a teacher from the time I was around 12 years old. And so what it would have normally taken someone else to have in the way of credentials and things of that nature, it did not take that for me. And I attribute that to the fact, no, I don't just attribute it to that. It's a fact that because of the conception that I had of myself, that I have of myself as being a teacher, is all that it took for me to be able to attain something that would have taken someone else years to attain by way of their having to go to school, because their conception of themselves is that they need to go to school in order to do this. Okay, so I just wanted to share another practical example of how, when you have your own conception of self, when you've made certain decisions about who you are, what you believe, what you're thinking, your innermost thoughts, that it is you that is determining the outcomes. It is you that is determining the bridge of incidents that Neville Goddard speaks of by way that you will achieve your outcomes. So I didn't know when I was visualizing packing a bag, walking out of the Office of Medical Records, I had no idea of where I was going next. All I knew was that I was leaving. That's all I knew. But the other thing that I always knew was that I was inherently a teacher. And all of a sudden, from the time I was 12 years old and believed and knew that I was a teacher, I also became a teacher of over 2,500 employees in one of my area's largest healthcare systems. So just wanted to stop by and remind you by practical example and experience that when you change your conception of yourself, changing your conception of yourself, and you will automatically change the world in which you live. Believe that and make it an incredible rest of your day.